And this stat really should scare anybody that's getting ready to sell their home. Jeremy Knight, the Knight Group, your favorite Austin realtor. I have a lot to get to today. The Austin housing numbers just came out, and there's a lot of news to get to in the headline. If you're a buyer seller in this market, this is a really, really important video to watch. And by the way, if you looked at the numbers, what do you think is going on? Drop a comment below. I do want to hear from you in this video. As we go through, there's lots of opportunity to comment on the things that we're talking about. I do need to hear from you in this video because, look, I can tell you what's happening in the market, but you who are the buyer or potentially seller in this market, you have a lot to say as well. So let's hear from you in the comments. Here we go. So here's the Austin numbers say. For Austin, the city of Austin, the median price stayed at $555,000. So that's 3 months in a row where we've seen 555 as a bottom. And if we look at this chart, it actually tracks with what happened last year towards the end of the year. So are we seeing the same cycle as what we saw in 2021 and 2022? It looks that way, yet I'm really getting worried about looking at next year when we actually see negative numbers if we don't start seeing increases in prices. Some have said that this is the bottom of the market right here. What do you think? Have we hit the bottom? So if we look at the MSA, which is the greater Austin area, we actually got down to 470 and in October up to 475. So we did see a little bit of a bounce back here. So maybe this is the market coming out, or maybe we start just to see a flattening in the market. What do you think on just the pricing alone? Now, some things that have me worried about the Austin numbers are this. If we look back at the Austin numbers, 613 closed sales. And the second thing to look at here is we're at 2 months inventory. That's 1.8 months inventory higher than we were last year. So that's a lot more inventory. And if you've been a friend of the channel, we've talked about keeping an eye on the inventory and some other key factors that we're going to talk about today. So that's pretty interesting. Now, what's also super, super interesting about the numbers is we're seeing a 20-day increase in the days on market. Now, if you look at a lot of the inventory that's on the market right now, you're seeing the days on market really start to stack up. And when you only see 600 closed, which is a 41% decrease in the amount of closings from 2021. Look, 2021 was a super hot market. We got into 2022. You had interest rates go up, which we'll talk about, inflation go up, which we'll talk about, and buyers got really scared. So this is all part and parcel for what we're seeing. Now, if we look at the MSA numbers, what's really interesting about this is that we're down 29%. So the MSA covers like Kyle, Buda, all the way up to like Georgetown, right? And then going out closer to Bastrop. 2,200 sales, still down 29%. We're at 3.2 months inventory for the extended area. That's a lot of inventory. But what's interesting about both of these numbers is something that we see every year. So which I think we're in kind of a cycle right now is that if you look, the amount of new listings dropped 13%. Now, if you look at the new listings for the Austin area, they dropped 18%. So what I'm seeing on my end is we were seeing inventory super low, like 1,800 units at the beginning of the year. And then about a month ago, 2 months ago, they got all the way up almost to 12,000 units. Now we're hanging out about 11,200 units. We're in that little mark. What's interesting about this and what can get a little scary about what's happening in the market, 61% of those homes on the market right now are vacant. Let me say that again so it sticks. 61%, roughly 6,882 homes are vacant. So if you think about it, half of those, so 25% of the overall market is actually new construction homes. And we're going to talk about new construction in a minute. That's a lot of homes that are vacant. So that's people that have left. That's people maybe that bought an investment property that said, this doesn't make sense anymore. I'm out. So there's a lot of reasons why we're seeing so many vacant homes. I have clients right now that are relocating back to California. I have clients that are relocating back to New York. I have clients that bought a property and they intended to move into it, and then their reload never happened. So far, what do you think? Drop a comment below. What do you think these numbers mean? But let's talk about something that's super, super important to all of this in the Austin area, and that is jobs. So something that we've been talking about in some of my other videos recently is the amount of jobs being laid off, right? So if we talk about, you look at Facebook or Meta, they're laying off 11,000 nationwide. They just announced they're laying off like 10,000 or something like that at Amazon. So they're starting to lay off a lot of people. Now, not all of those layoffs are here in the Austin area, so they are over multi-states. So that's something to think about. We will see an impact of that in the market. But if you look at the unemployment rate, we're still at 2.7% unemployment, which is extremely low. And I'm about to tell you a very important stat that nobody is talking about. This stat is the stat that everybody should still be looking at who was saying the market's crashing or it's going to crash. This market stat I'm going to talk about in a minute, so stay tuned for that. One other thing that we're seeing with all of this in the market is that rentals are starting to flatten out. Now, if you look at this article by KView, the headline is Austin rent growth slows for the first time in 18 months. Slows. But right below it, although the last 18 months and rent increases have slowed down, the rent increases from October 2019 skyrocketed by 23.5% for the average overall cost of rent. And if you look at that number, it's like a median of about $1,700 a month. If you're a buyer in this market or you're a seller in this market, here's what I'm going to talk about that's very, very important for you to understand. Buyers are worried about interest rates. I'm going to have a guy come on the channel in a couple weeks to talk about the cost of waiting. That's in a couple weeks from now, so check the live streams for that. But overall, interest rates dropped their biggest drop since 1981 this last week. So we saw a high in the mid sevens, now down about 6.65%. So we have seen prices drop pretty dramatically due to interest rates. Now, the Fed has said they're still going to continue, but a lot of people are saying next year rates will drop. And I'm talking to a lot of buyers right now that are saying, I'm going to wait till next year to buy. So if you're one of those people that says, I'm on the fence and I'm probably going to buy next year, drop a comment below. I want to hear from you on that. So if you're getting ready to sell or you're selling right now or you're on the fence of selling, here's something that's really, really important to know. Right now at the end of the year, a lot of these builders are offering a ton of incentives. So if your home's on the market, you have to do one of two things, either drop the price or offer incentives right now to the buyer, because these buyers don't want to pay 6.5% for an interest rate. So you have some of these builders that are offering a ton of money in commissions to agents, right? So they're offering, like Taylor Morrison's as an example, 7% to agent commission. And then they're offering a lot of money to either buy downs. I've seen others that are offering like 4.9% interest rate and stuff like that. So for sellers, that becomes a little bit of a hard pill to swallow. And if you're a buyer right now looking at these end of year sales from these builders, a lot of these builders are trying to close by the end of the year. They're offering a ton of incentives. So sellers, hold tight. I don't think next year, the beginning of next year, is going to be any better, because I know a lot of homeowners that are saying, I'm going to wait for the March market to put my home on the market. And then you also have a lot of buyers that are talking about coming back in the pool, especially if you see interest rates drop any further. Now, again, the Fed said they are going to continue to raise rates, but inflation has shown a little crack in it, so it might be coming down. If we see inflation numbers in November and December really drop down and they don't raise the Fed rate as much, you might see people driving back in the market. And look, this time of the year, we do see it. We see a lot of people panic buy towards the end of the year. So that could be something that happens. What do you think on that? All right, but I want to get to my next point. And this point is very important, but stay tuned. I do have one more point that's super, super important. So let's look at this though. If you're a homeowner and you're getting ready to sell, why we're seeing sales prices drop so far is a couple of reasons. Number one, the interest rates, but number two, look at this stat. Austin is number one for most equity rich city. So if you have $250,000 equity in a property right now and you need to sell it, what is the number one thing that we can do? Well, if you're an agent, you could do a lot of video and a lot of marketing, which we do, to get buyers in to look at these properties. I just listed a home last week with a great video, and I had 20 people come through the open house just from the video alone. So definitely find an agent that could do some better marketing than just putting on the MLS. But the other thing most sellers are doing right now is just dropping the price. Okay, I could have made $250,000 equity. I'm okay making $150,000 equity because I need to get out of this house, especially with 61% of the homes on the market vacant. The one thing that we also need to note on this, though, is that in Q3, the housing market dropped $1.3 trillion. So we did see a pretty big dive in Q3. Yet Austin still is one of the most equity rich cities in the US. So let's talk about this right now. And this is the most important stat that nobody is looking at or even wants to talk about. We still have more millennials in the buying age than ever. So what's happening with our millennials? They're going and they're renting right now. At a certain point, a lot of these millennials that are renting, if they're renting or they're going back in home and live with mom and dad, they're cohabitating, then maybe they're not buying. But if we see rates drop back down, and we see these people with maybe some equity in their hands. Yes, you're going to tell me affordability, Jeremy, affordability. I get that, because guess what? Austin just increased its tax base another $3 billion because Austin voters voted to increase $3 billion to go back to the schools, and they passed a bond for $350 million that went to affordable housing. So Austin, stop voting for the things that keep raising your property taxes, because a lot of people are worried about property taxes going into next year, and they're thinking, oh, with prices coming down, no big deal. I'll try to get my property taxes down next year. Your voters are continue to vote for bonds that increase those taxes. So it's not going to happen. But here's the thing, millennials out there, there's a lot of millennials. So even though we might be looking at a very uncertain market, people like Blackstone or BlackRock or whoever are still putting $50 billion aside to buy single family homes, because they're going to turn you into renters. So are you going to stay a renter, or are you potentially going to buy? If you're a seller, are you going to sell? What are you doing? Or maybe you moving up? Drop a comment below. We're going to hear from you. Jeremy at the Night Group. We'll see you in the next video.